Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It's Season 3, Episode 11. We're talking safeties today, Austin, so let's get right into it. You've seen the Steelers' positional group here, what they have, and what they've lost. So let's just talk about it. We got Sean Davis, Morgan Burnett, J.J. Wilcox, Nat Burr, Jordan Dangerfield, and Malik Golden on the roster right now. So what do the Steelers have?
Question marks. The only person I feel confident in is Morgan Burnett. He's not elite, but he's good, and that's way better than what the Steelers had last year. He also provides versatility as he can play linebacker if necessary and can also come in on safety blitzes. I think he will be a good player for the Steelers. At least he can't be worse than Mike Mitchell. We aren't even completely sure which position he is actually playing for sure yet. They said they wanted to move Sean Davis, but again, all question marks. Speaking of Davis, I am really hoping last year was only a sophomore slump because he was just awful, especially compared to his rookie year. It was bad. I'm hoping he performs like he did as a rookie, though I'm not expecting. I sort of expect averageness, somewhere between his rookie season and last season. There was just too many mistakes to me to make me think he'll be really all that great in this upcoming year. Next, the Steelers currently have J.J. Wilcox, but I don't really expect that to last so long. He's a mini Mike Mitchell, and that's it. He showed last year he's ineffective on special teams, which is why they brought in Nat Burr. And Nat Burr is of the same type, where he hits hard, but he's also a big special teams contributor, likely kicking Wilcox off the roster, as he can be a formidable backup while being a great special teams player. The only guy really left worth talking about is Jordan Dangerfield. I was really surprised when he was cut last year. I thought when he was asked to step up into a starting job, he did decently. Like 2 years ago against the Chiefs in the regular season where he had to start due to injuries, apparently the Steelers don't believe in him, and I personally think that's a shame, and I don't think he will make the roster again this year, but it is what it is. So what do you have to say about this group of safeties the Steelers have?
Well, I'm in complete agreement with you, Austin, but as far as the question marks regarding this position, Sean Davis is the prime example. So what is Sean Davis? He was the Steelers Rookie of the Year in 2016. We already know he regressed last year and had a pretty brutal season. So with the signing of Morgan Burnett and the cutting of Mike Mitchell, the Steelers are talking about moving him to free safety, which would actually make this his third position in the league, or his third position in as many years in the league. For those who might not remember, he actually came into the league as a slot cornerback. That was where the Steelers originally intended for him to play before moving him to safety at the start of the year. He's a decent run defender, and he's a decent player in coverage, and he's not a big playmaker, and he's not going to have a huge highlight reel. So what does that make Davis? A versatile player that can play several positions adequately, or is he a player that can't play well anywhere? If last year was an indication, it could be the latter. This year is going to be a huge year for him because it's going to tell us which one he's more likely to be. The recently acquired Morgan Burnett was a smart addition for the Steelers front office, let's be honest here. A guy who can play the hybrid strong safety position. He plays close to the box, and he's a solid run defender, but he's shown that he's good in pass coverage up the seam, too. He'll probably slide in nicely as a starting strong safety. In reserve, J.J. Wilcox, who you already talked about, acquired in a trade last year, was underwhelming at best in limited playing time last year. He was eventually banished to the bench for the remainder of the season, and despite talks of him potentially having more playing time next year, I still believe that if the Steelers add a safety in the draft, he is going to be cut. I get why he's on the roster right now, but I really hope the Steelers have a replacement plan in place because he's not that good, and he's certainly not worth the $3.8 million price tag. Nat Burr was just signed to be the new special teams ace for playing Robert Golden, which doesn't bode well for Jordan Dangerfield, who was basically a special teams contributor for the most part the last few years. Before being cut from last year's team, this is probably his last chance to make the team because I don't think he's eligible to be on the practice squad anymore. Speaking of Golden, Malik Golden, not Robert Golden, looked good in last year's preseason. In fact, I remember he had an interception where he actually injured his hamstring on the play, and sadly that probably ended any chance he had of making the final roster, so he did get cut. So I'm hoping that he can continue to play well like he did in last year's preseason. All right. So there's actually been quite a bit of transactions going on. Obviously, we know about Mike Mitchell being cut and the additions of Nat Burr and Morgan Burnett. The only other player that was, I guess, released, if you will, was Damian Stafford back at the beginning of training camp last year. He just didn't report, so I'm not sure if he might have just quit on his NFL career there. So we already discussed the big moves that already took place with the signings of Burnett and Burr. And so far, Mike Mitchell has not been cut. To my knowledge, he hasn't been even to another team for a visit, has he?
No, I don't think so. I haven't heard of anyone bringing him in.
Interesting. We'll have to see if that will continue. All right, let's talk about free agents, because I have believed that the Steelers should have added another free agent just to push J.J. Wilcox off the roster, to be completely honest with you. But it looks as though they aren't going to do that, at least not before the draft. Do you think the Steelers should look into it right now?
I honestly think they should. This safety position just got absolutely destroyed for some reason. Like, the market collapsed. Because there are several value guys still out there that are worse starters. Like, Kenny Vaccaro is still a free agent. Eric Reed is still a free agent. Trey Boston and Tyvon Branch are all still free agents. The safety market, like I said, took a bad hit, and a bunch of these guys are unemployed right now, but, like, they shouldn't be. All of these guys, I think, should be on a roster right now. But I think they should try and get a cheap deal to Branch, personally. He made so many tackles before his injury last year, and I know he's coming off a really tough injury to come back from. It's an ACL injury, but he was just so good as a tackler, and I feel like he'd be decent to bring in if I were to have any of those four come in.
Man, even I feel the same way. If the Steelers were to cut Wilcox first, it'd free up a lot of cap room, but even if they didn't have space, like they don't really have much space now, I was looking at some other names. What were their names? Steven Terrell from Kansas City, Jalen Watkins previously with the Eagles, and Antoine Exum of the 49ers. Those are all guys that are under 30, and they might not be, starters, but they can play in the league. So I thought maybe the Steelers should look into adding them just for at least depth purposes so that they can release J.J. Wilcox. Because that's the thing about Wilcox. He didn't even play special teams at the end of last year, so he was just useless, in a word. So I don't think there's any point in keeping him on the roster at all. And then, would you consider the draft need to be any different? Because I guess you could say the free agent need is medium to high, but I think the draft need, you could probably say, is a little higher. I don't know if it's a question of if the Steelers are drafting a safety, but more so when.
Yeah, well, Morgan Burnett is not a long-term option. The Steelers should be drafting young to learn behind him. Also, Sean Davis may not last if he continues to play like he did last year, so it would be nice to bring in insurance regardless. Either way, you need a safety, however you look at it. Don't you agree?
Even if you get a depth guy, that helps. I don't know if you're drafting Sean Davis's replacement right now, but I don't think you're drafting Morgan Burnett's replacement either. I mean, you could be, but signing him to a 3-year deal for it's not a ton of money. But I would think that you don't probably draft his replacement until next year. But I also could be wrong. This could be a depth player or maybe just a coverage specialist. But either way, I don't think the Steelers are going to be looking super early for this position. But in case they do, because a lot of mock drafts have had safeties going to Pittsburgh, what's one safety that you've been looking at that could be taken early in the draft?
The first one I was looking at was Ronnie Harrison out of Alabama. He is 6'3" and 214 pounds. Harrison was a quarterback and safety for the Florida State University High School in Tallahassee, yet the Seminoles didn't try recruiting him. Alabama found him, though, and it paid off for him as he played in all 15 games of their championship season. He only started one, but he made 17 tackles, 1 for a loss, getting 2 interceptions, and having 6 other pass breakups, despite being a backup to a lot of talent. As a sophomore, he became the full-time starter. He made 86 tackles that season, got 2 interceptions, and had 7 other pass breakups. He also was a big contributor on special teams with a team leading 8 tackles. In 2017, he was a second-team All-SEC pick, tying the team high of 74 tackles, 4.5 of which were for a loss, and 2.5 of those being sacks. Getting 3 interceptions, and getting 4 other pass breakups before declaring for the NFL draft. So, Harrison has an amazing combination of size and speed, one of the top in the draft, actually. As far as the speed goes, he has pretty good makeup speed, as well as a quick pedal and easy transition speed. Then he's also pretty solid in coverage. He's capable of playing quality man coverage in certain matchups, and he also designates time to read the quarterback size, not getting overly focused on the routes the receivers are running. However, he still plays against his man with route anticipation, and as I said earlier, has the ability to transition quickly if he misread. He plays underneath routes well and uses length to break up passes. Then he's pretty physical and tough. He's always looking to lay out some punishment with his hits. He handles work near the line of scrimmage with the aggression the team would want, and he's also quick to punch and get rid of blockers on him. Then finally, he's pretty versatile as far as the safety goes. He has experience playing both high or low safety and also has blitz talent if a team wanted to use him that way. So, on the flip side of things, he has some pretty good speed. He doesn't always use it on a consistent basis. It's almost like he plays lazily sometimes. He shows a sort of slowness to him when moving from one spot to another pre-snap. Then, as a tackler, he has a lot of problems. He just doesn't play with the poise and patience in open field. He ends up getting antsy and is too willing to overreact, and leads him to give talented running backs opportunities to beat him back inside. And he just has too many lead shoulder hits as a tackler. When he gets to the NFL, he's going to become more willing to do wrap tackles to stop some of the missed tackles he's had. Finally, more complex routes have baited him into jumping early on an early break that was never happening. So the bottom line is that Harrison is a nasty man in a good way. You watch some of his highlights, just see this guy playing to land the next big hit or to strip the ball out of a guy's hands last second. His toughness and aggression is also a downfall, though. It's caused him to be impatient at times as well as miss tackles. If he learns when it's best to unleash his wrath and when it's just best to wrap up and take down the receiver, instead he could be dangerous in the NFL. But because of his missed tackles and a few other things, Harrison will be going somewhere in the second round. He could possibly be taken in the end of the first, but I think he's going to be somewhere in the second round if you had to ask me. So that was Ronnie Harrison out of Alabama. Who is your first prospect?
First prospect that I think Steelers fans should be paying attention to, at least from what I had been looking at, is he comes from a family which you might have heard of before. His name is Justin Reed, a Stanford product, 6'1" and 204 pounds. He's the younger brother of former San Francisco 49er Eric Reed, who was one of my favorite players coming out of LSU a few years back. But Justin's a fine safety in his own right, a physical and athletic specimen. The former 4-star recruit made an immediate impact upon enrolling at Stanford as he played in all 12 games in 2015 and racked up 23 tackles while adding a pass breakup and an interception as a reserve. He cracked the lineup his sophomore year, starting 10 of a possible 13 games, and he was named an All-Pac-12 honorable mention by collecting 57 tackles, 4 of which went for a loss, and he had 7 pass breakups. Last season, he earned second-team AP All-American honors and first-team All-Pac-12 honors by making a whopping 99 tackles. 6.5 of those were for a loss with 5 interceptions and 6 more pass breakups. So Reed, obviously as far as something that you're going to be looking for as a positive aspect, he comes from an athletic family and he has NFL pedigree. But what you might not know is that not only is Justin's brother Eric, a NFL player as well. His father ran track at LSU, and his other brother Ryan is a soccer player at Coastal Carolina University. So Reed comes from a good athletic family. But as far as his actual play, Reed is pretty much everything you'd be looking for in an early round safety prospect. He wasn't locked into the strong or free safety position at Stanford. He played all over the field and looked comfortable while doing so. He has great recognition and responds to whatever's happening on the play very quickly. I saw in his highlight tape he was drawn to the ball very quickly. His smarts result him in rarely being caught out of position, and at times he was the center field guy, but at other times he had to play in the box too. He lined up over tight ends, and he actually played in the slot too. He showed an ability to run with receivers and tight ends over the middle. He has NFL speed at the safety position, and he has good range over the top, rarely getting beat by throws over the top. He has great ball skills too, even if he only intercepted 7 passes in his college career, it's clear that he can play the ball. Several of his interceptions came on difficult plays where he had to scoop the ball low off the ground or had to make a leaping interception, which his pick of Sam Darnold earlier this past year was quite amazing. So being able to make those athletic interceptions, it's pretty exciting, and obviously it pops off the highlight reel, but it's nice to know that he can make those plays too. He's fast enough to elude blockers on the second level too, and he's a solid tackler too. And he hits pretty hard too. On the flip side though, as far as what's not so good about Justin Reid, he doesn't have that great closing burst that you'd want out of a safety. So if he gets beaten, he's not going to catch up really, and he's not as agile as you think he might be. Crossing routes, which he can run with, they do frustrate him. He forgets his technique at times, and he'll get beat on the inside. It can result in big gains, too, because he's a little over-aggressive, too. So play-action fakes will fool him, and misdirection plays will get him to bite too early sometimes. He rushes in too quickly as a tackler because he's so willing to make a hard hit, and he'll actually take bad angles to the tackle too. So he needs to learn to be a little more patient. So bottom line for Justin Reid, he's a great all-around athlete and talent at the safety position. Although he doesn't have many eye-popping statistics, he did everything asked of him in Stanford, and he's underrated in coverage. Scouts actually believe he's better at this point than Eric was, his brother, at this point in his career. He's not without his flaws, but they are few and far between, and furthermore, they can be coached up in time. He has Pro Bowl potential according to scouts, but he could possibly slip to as late as the early second round. But his name is one that's been mocked to the Steelers before, so be on the lookout for him even if the Steelers don't draft him, because he's probably going to be a good football player. So that was Justin Reid from Stanford University. Austin, who is your second prospect?
My second prospect is Godwin Gafford. He is from Northwestern. He is 6 foot and 205 pounds. He was highly recruited out of high school, as he was the finalist for Ohio's Mr. Football Award for his 1,985 rushing yards, 29 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. He ended up picking Northwestern, where he redshirted his first year. Then in the following year, he started 5 of 11 games, making 51 tackles and tying for the team lead in interceptions with 3, which, funny enough, all 3 came in one game against Wisconsin. So, I don't know, I found that funny. Gafford took on a starting role in 2015, starting all their games and racking up 87 stops, 4.5 being for a loss, and 5 pass breakups. In this 2016 season is where he really started to get noticed, though. He earned himself second-team all-conference status after racking up 108 tackles, 5.5 for a loss, an interception, and ranked 9th in the FBS with 6 solo tackles a game during the year. That one interception came against Pittsburgh in the Pinstripe Bowl, if anyone remembers that, just to let you guys know and be mean. In his senior season, Gafford again started all the games and got himself second-team All-Big Ten honors with 78 tackles, 1.5 for a loss, 2 interceptions, and 9 pass breakups. So he's got basically all the good outside traits that help him with football. What I mean is he has high intelligence, pretty solid speed, a solid build, and toughness to play near the line of scrimmage, and solid strength. He also has had a lot of starting experience and has been a locker room leader, being the 2017 team captain. Then, while he doesn't have the height, he has both the arm length and vertical ability to fight for 50-50 balls with the best of them. I highly recommend you see his deep ball interception against Wisconsin. It was really nice. He also has a strong makeup burst to close in on his target. I think my personal favorite thing about him, though, is that he is versatile in the sense that he could play nickel linebacker if asked to. Another thing that's good about him is that he will cut underneath a route to be able to get his hands at the ball. And then finally, he's an experienced, productive cover man on special teams. He was played special teams all 4 years in college, so he has tons of experience. So on the flip side of things, while he has the speed, he doesn't quite have the coverage ability to play man-to-man. It's really because he both lacks as a pattern reader and then also just works with what he sees rather than using anticipation skills. Then when it comes to zone coverage, he lacks the instincts and can be slow to close the gap between a throw. Moving on to him as a runner, he has a rigid upright back pedal and is shown to turn around and run too late at times, as well as he uses excessive chop steps before pulling the trigger on where he goes. Then there was the issue of him being inconsistent to wrap up this past season. And then finally in the NFL, he may have to play strong safety only because he may not be able to handle free safety. So to wrap him up, he's got a lot of great athleticism to him, but both his coverage skills have flaws to them. Zone isn't so bad, but in man coverage, he's going to be a liability. It also kind of sucks that because of his coverage skills, he probably won't be able to play free safety, but at least he can play a nickel linebacker to make up for it. I think the fact that he can play special teams really helps him, as he's predicted to go in the third or fourth round, according to analysts. But I would more likely say that the fourth or fifth is the reality here. So that was Godwin Gafford from Northwestern. Who is your second prospect?
My second prospect is Jesse Bates from Wake Forest University. A two-time first-team All-Indiana pick in high school, Jesse Bates was a highly sought-out recruit in the Northeast. He did redshirt his freshman year before making a big impact in 2016. He earned a consensus freshman All-American nod and was the ACC's runner-up for the conference's Defensive Rookie of the Year award as he piled up 100 tackles, 3.5 for a loss, and had 5 interceptions. He actually returned 2 of those for touchdowns that year. He followed that up with an ACC honorable mention in 2017 with 79 more tackles, 6 for a loss, and 1 interception. He did miss 2 games last year due to injuries. So the pros of Jesse Bates' game, he's a cover safety through in and through out. A lot of that's because of his ability to move his hips and feet quickly and fluidly. He can adjust on the fly and was tasked with a lot of different coverages in college. Bates has good instincts for a young safety, and he's good at watching the quarterback's eyes, reading him as he reads the defense. A good analogy for the way he reacts to the ball after it's been thrown is kind of like a flip being switched. When he commits, he wastes no time in getting to the destination. Bates responds well to play action. He actually looks comfortable in zone coverage across the field, whether it's in deep thirds, deep quarters, or cover 2, or whether he's doing a cover 3 closer to the line of scrimmage. He actually played baseball in high school, so you can see his center fielder's mentality in him, and that he's very rangy. And with 2 pick sixes, he's shown that he can take the ball to the house in his hands too. Don't be too concerned about his high tackle totals, because oftentimes that's not good for safeties, but he was great in pursuit and was involved in a lot of plays he probably shouldn't have been anyways, so don't be worried when you see his high tackle totals. On the other side, though, Jesse Bates he's been questioned as to why he declared for the draft already. There's not a ton of tape on him, and he would have probably benefited from another year of college ball. Outside of that, he's honestly a little scrawny for an NFL safety, so he's probably going to need his own NFL redshirt season too. So teams picking him are probably going to know that they aren't drafting a day 1 starter. Scouts are also concerned about his durability because not only is he a little undersized, but he also not only is he undersized and he doesn't have the correct amount of muscle on his body right now, he also plays a little bit bigger than he does, and that meaning he tries to be a little more aggressive and hits too often, and that could lead to problems when you're facing bigger players on the offense in the NFL. Bates also struggles with discipline on the field. This is especially noticeable on deep coverage responsibilities. He can get burned because he commits too early to a receiver's route, and when they're running something with misdirection, so like a stop and go or a sluggo is a perfect example. He'll commit to the sluggo, and all of a sudden, boom, he's getting popped over the top. He's also not as good a tackler as you would like. He has shown the ability to make tackles, but sometimes his size makes it a problem for him. It's unknown at this time if he's really going to be able to get much better at that. So bottom line with Jesse Bates, he's a good and versatile young safety. He's athletic and probably one of the best cover safeties in the draft this year. He couples that with the strong will to hit receivers over the middle. But his struggles in the open field tackling and over-aggressiveness can get him burned if he's not careful. He looks to be a good pro in this league, but it's going to take a little time before he gets there. Expect him to be gone before the 3rd round. So that was Jesse Bates from Wake Forest University. Austin, give me your third prospect for the safety position.
My third prospect is Terrell Edmonds from Virginia Tech. He's 2 and 220 pounds. He might sound familiar because he is the brother to Trumaine Edmonds, the likely top 10 pick inside linebacker, also out of Virginia Tech. Terrell's been mostly overshadowed in his college career, to be honest with you, and I feel bad almost reading into it. His father was former Pro Bowl tight end for Ferrell Edmonds, so the NFL bloodline runs in the family. Terrell started as an all-state running back in Virginia, rushing for 1,752 yards and 25 touchdowns, and most recruiters list him as a cornerback. So Virginia Tech used him as just that on the scout team in 2014. The next season, he moved to safety and started 8 of 15 games, getting 34 stops, 1.5 being for a loss. And then 2016 is where he broke out and earned himself an honorable mention All-ACC selection after starting in 13 of 14 games, garnering 89 tackles, 2.5 for a loss, and 4 interceptions, including a clutch one in the Belk Bowl. In his junior season, he ended the season short after 10 starts to get necessary surgery on his shoulder. Despite the surgery, he still earned third-team All-ACC recognition while playing through the pain, getting 59 tackles, 2.5 for a loss, intercepting 2 passes, and breaking up 4 others. So, as I said, athleticism just runs in the family for Edmonds. He's got an impressive combination of both NFL size as well as quick twitch movement. He can use that quick twitch movement to make quick changes in any direction. From being a cornerback, he has developed a very sudden burst in lateral transitions, good for closing horizontal space. Then he also has a good pursuit speed near the line. Another great thing about him is that he has a reliable hand to take it away when he is in position. And he has so much energy on the field. He's always looking for work as a tackler. Wrapping up his positives is that he has the size and speed to be an immediate help on kick coverages, and he's also been one of Virginia Tech's leaders on defense. So what's not so good about him is something that stuck out to me was that he, for most of his college career, it's been plagued by missed open field tackles. It's a problem he's always had, so I don't expect it to go away, and that worries me. Then another thing that I saw in his tape was that he tries to lay big hits, but it looks like he takes the worst of the collision most of the time. Next, he really lacks instincts and feel for deep coverage, which is bad for safety where they mostly play deep. He just doesn't get deep enough to help with those deep throws. That could be partially attributed to him being slow to read the quarterback. By the time he doesn't have enough time to drop back deep. And even when he does find the time, if he's not facing the ball, he's shown he can't find it. He can't locate it when it's behind his back. Also, while in coverage, he gets impatient, often bites, or gets too aggressive on route fakes, forcing him to have to recover. Then when he's pursuing as a tackler, he both takes inconsistent angles as well as lunges rather than slides his feet to close distance. Finally, his shoulder is going to be a concern because he's going to need to clear all the medical stuff coming into the NFL, and of course, there's going to be worry that the shoulder injury and surgery will have affected him. So, for his play, Edmonds has been compared to cornerback Deshaun Shedd. I think that's a decent comparison. I think that Edmonds has it in him to be great, like the rest of his family, who are all athletes, including his mom. He's just got to get better at deep coverage because he's got some great speed and traits that can be used on special teams immediately. But because of his lack of deep coverage skills, as well as his missed tackles in college, he probably won't be drafted until round 4 at the least. So that was Terrell Edmonds out of Virginia Tech. Who is your third prospect?
My third prospect is Kaiser White out of West Virginia University. He is the biggest safety prospect I looked at. It's 6'2" and 216 pounds. Kaiser White comes from a family of football players just like Justin Reed. He is the younger brother of former first-round pick, although quite maligned and having an unfortunate career so far, is Kevin White. He is also the older brother of current Mountaineer Karoon. I'm not sure how you say that. Kaiser went to Lackawanna College after high school, where he earned JUCO All-American honors in 2015 with 37 tackles, 3 interceptions, and 4 pass breakups in 10 games. His efforts got him named to top 20 JUCO prospect in 2016 before stepping into a starting role at West Virginia, where he was inserted into the starting lineup as a safety linebacker hybrid. He finished with 58 tackles, 7 of them for a loss, 3 sacks, 5 pass breakups, and 2 forced fumbles in 12 games. The following year, he was named to the All-Big 12 second team with 94 tackles, 7.5 for a loss, 3 interceptions, and 4 pass breakups going along with 2 forced fumbles. So the thing about White you notice immediately is that he's got a great frame for an NFL safety. He combines good length and height with a good amount of muscle on his body. He has the option to keep his weight where it is, or if he wants, he can even add more weight if the team transitions him to more of a hybrid linebacker role. A team captain at West Virginia, coaches have told scouts he was a leader on their team and he played with the same amount of intensity and grit on every play through in and throughout, whether or not he's involved in the play. White is known as a smart player. He quickly diagnoses pass plays and supports the run both willingly and effectively, both on the edge and up the middle. The tape is full of him making tackles when he runs his feet. He loves matching up against tight ends, and he enjoys the physical aspect of a one-on-one match with them. Good hands for a safety, too. When you're that big, it makes it pretty hard to get beat over the top, too. His most underrated ability has to be how good of a blitzer he is. Teams have thought he was a linebacker based on the way he rushes the quarterback, and he loves to hit the quarterback, too. On the flip side, though, Kaiser White, his speed is just kind of below average here, even for a safety. That kind of rules him out being a free safety, a deep man. He's much better playing downhill and assisting in run support. Although he is big for a safety, he's going to struggle against bigger tight ends. So even though he's big, he's still not going to be able to fix all matchup problems. His agility isn't great either, so he isn't someone that changes direction fluidly. He might not find a consistent role on some teams unless if he puts on more weight. Actually, he might not even be a safety after all. His hands need some work when he's engaged with a blocker, and although he loves to blitz and hit, he's not explosive enough. He needs some technique refinement as a tackler, and he can be beat in the open field right now. So White was a late bloomer at West Virginia. He worked really hard to get where he's at. He leads with physicality and grit, and teams that look at him are going to be interested in making him kind of a guy who can play linebacker and safety. And although he's not the best athlete on the field, his work ethic and desire should make up for it a little bit. He does have a future as a starter and if not a contributor in this league. He's projected to be taken between the 3rd and 4th rounds, but I could actually see a team reaching for him in the 2nd. I enjoyed watching his highlight tape. I felt like he was going to be a pretty good player in this league. All right, that was Kaiser White from West Virginia University. Austin, who is your 4th and final safety prospect?
My 4th and final prospect is Armani Watson out of Texas A&M. He is 5'10" and 202 pounds. Steelers quarterback Josh Dobbs may remember Watts, as Watts got a game-sealing interception against him in the 2016 season when Tennessee played Texas A&M. So anyhow, he got a start as a 4-star recruit out of high school, having 9 interceptions in his senior year before getting recruited to the Aggies squad. As a true freshman, he led the team with 3 interceptions in 2014, racking up 59 stops, 2 for a loss, and 9 pass breakups. Then on his second year, his tackles skyrocketed, going from 59 tackles to 126 tackles and 13 starts. 6 of those tackles went for a loss, added on an interception, and then he had 2 more pass breakups. Unfortunately, in his junior season, he suffered a leg injury later in the year, but still managed to garner 56 tackles, 6 for a loss, 2 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles in the 9 games he did play. Then, in 2017, he earned 3rd team Associated Press All-American, as well as 2nd team All-SEC honors by starting in 12 games and getting, get ready for this, 87 tackles, 10 being for a loss, 4 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, 2 fumble recoveries, 2 forced fumbles, and 2 blocked kicks. A lot of stats for him. So, from watching some of his tape, I just really love the closing speed he possesses. Whether it be to try and close the gap between the receiver and the ball, or if he's coming downhill to stop a screen pass, he just gets there quick and sees what's happening pretty quick. Not to mention he's like slippery. That's usually a term you give to an offensive player, but I feel like it's fitting for him because he just slides through with his pursuit angles to stop players by the line of scrimmage. He's got some pretty impressive athletic ability as well as the long range to him, that he's such a dangerous safety. Then he's got some pretty good instincts and timing that when combined with his soft hands as well as his high leaping ability, it makes him a turnover machine. In coverage, he plays above average, and if he is asked, he could definitely play man coverage, as he has the feet and fluidity to handle man coverage with ease. When it comes to tackling, he can lay some hits if he needs to. In fact, a lot of his highlights are him blowing people up. Then finally, he anticipates when a play is happening outside of his area and is pretty good at getting involved in the play when it's not near him. So that's good. On the other side of things, Watts was not dealt the ideal NFL size, and then he also just lacks the dope. He actually really lacks strength. He only got 13 reps on the bench press, which is actually the second worst out of this year's safeties out of the 21 of them that attended the combine. So he could do with a little bit more strength to him. Then he has struggled to finish plays at times, often diving at a player's ankles, and this has resulted in a lot of feast or famine style plays. He just doesn't really consistently tackle with good technique. He does sometimes, but not all the time, and it's made him not trustworthy in run support, being inconsistent there as well. Then there are a couple things wrong with his pursuit. Firstly, he loses the urgency in his pursuit when coming from the backside, and then the second thing is he loses leverage in his pursuit and ends up overrunning the play at times. As for his coverage, the only thing he's really bad at is that he gets caught guessing on routes, which isn't the worst thing in the world. Finally, he's missed games on 3 different occasions, one being from a leg injury, so that's something to watch out for. So the bottom line on Watts is that he's been compared to Jimmy Ward by some analysts, and I will agree. I think the biggest thing holding back Watts is his strength, as I think part of the reason he sometimes struggles to finish plays is because of that. If he just get a bit stronger to around where he can do maybe 16 reps on the bench press, I think Watts would be a definite long-time starter for a team. Even if he's only 5'10", I think his leaping abilities make up for it. And his problems aren't super hard to work with. So therefore, I think he'll be drafted late in the second round, if not the beginning of the third. So that was Armani Watson at Texas A&M. Who's your final prospect?
My final prospect is Jeremy Reeves out of the small school South Alabama. 5'11" and 190 pounds. Watching his highlight tape was a little frustrating, Austin, for one reason alone. He had 3 numbers in his highlight tape. That was kind of difficult to understand what was going on. He wore the numbers 14, 1, and 9 in his college career. So let's talk about Reeves. When scouts asked coaches about what position Reeves played at South Alabama, the coaches replied that his true position wasn't corner or nickel or even safety. His real position was, quote, hitter. Renowned as one of the most physical defensive backs in the country, a back injury in high school scared bigger colleges away from Reeves, but his successful collegiate career probably has recruiters wondering how they missed on him. His freshman year saw him playing mostly as a reserve, but he did play in all 13 games, finishing with 16 tackles, a pass breakup, and a forced fumble. His sophomore year, he cracked the starting lineup and was awarded a second-team All-Sunbelt selection by recording 96 tackles, 8 for a loss, while forcing 3 fumbles and intercepting 2 passes. He also led the team in pass breakups with 6 that year. The next season as a junior, he was named a first-team All-Sunbelt selection with an 85 tackles, 5.5 for a loss, with 3 interceptions, 7 pass breakups, and 2 forced fumbles. His senior season was his best year yet, as he was named the Sun Belt Conference's Defensive Player of the Year and earned a first-team All-Conference nod again. He racked up 104 tackles, 7 of which went for a loss, 1.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles and interceptions, 3 forced fumbles and interceptions, and 7 more pass breakups. All right. So, strengths for Reeves. He was actually a cornerback before this past season, so he has experience playing both the cornerback and both cornerback positions, meaning outside and inside in the slot, and both safety positions. He was also surprisingly effective and willing in run support as a cornerback, and that has translated well in his switch to the safety position. This is seen clearly by looking at the fact that he had 285 tackles in his last 3 seasons as a starter. When you watch the tape, you immediately recognize that he's an aggressive player and he's active in the box. He has that true killer instinct and run support that a safety would like. It's not surprising to see that Reeves can make a tackle in the backfield on a running play when he was originally lined up outside of the box. So acceleration and speed are great here, as 20.5 tackles for a loss speaks for itself from a safety. He isn't the biggest or strongest player in the world, but he does carry a strong body on a compact frame, and he uses his size to his advantage. As bigger bodies don't intimidate him, he's learned to sift and root his way through bigger blockers by being elusive. He knows his size, and instead of taking on ball carriers high, he lunges at them at their lower body and traditionally does a good job of finishing tackles. He has ball skills too, forcing 9 career fumbles and picking off 8 passes. On the other side for Reeves, though, At only 5'10", he lacks the ideal length for a safety, and that works against him, especially because of his aggressive nature. Where that aggressiveness helps him, though, is against the run. Works against him is the run. It burns him against play-action fake and pump fakes, too. He also needs to learn to become a little more patient. He loves to fly into the play and make a big hit, but will sacrifice positioning if he gets fooled by the player if he takes the wrong angle of pursuit, which can list to missed tackles if that's the case, which that could remind you of Troy Polamalu at the end of his career when he lost his speed, and if he was wrong, he would get burned pretty badly. His speed deep down the field won't blow you away either, and he struggles to turn and run with receivers. The transition from backpedal to sprint takes a little more time than it should. After only one season at safety, he's probably going to need more time to learn how to adapt at the position and how they defend different patterns. Shorter arms means he's not going to be as impactful in pass defense as he probably could be. So bottom line for Jeremy Reeves, he's a tough and strong-willed football player. And he loves assisting and run support, and he can cover pretty well, and his versatility allows him to play either in the box or in cover 2 as a free safety. His collegiate competition and average testing numbers are going to push him down the board a bit, but he seems like a very enticing prospect in the final 2 rounds, and if he goes undrafted, I'd really like to see him in Pittsburgh personally. So that was Jeremy Reeves, cornerback and safety, my final prospect. So let's talk about ranking prospects. As we've been doing all offseason, we've been ranking the prospects we've looked at, not based on how good they are, but instead how you think they'd fit with the Steelers and who you'd most like to see in Pittsburgh next season. So, Austin, take it away.
So, my first prospect that I would like to see with the Steelers is Armani Watson. While maybe a risk as he lacks the strength and does have a small bit of injury history, I like his upside. I think that if he puts work in to get stronger, he could come out as one of the top safeties out of this draft, despite not going until late in the second. Then second is Ronnie Harrison. Harrison is the next best option. I don't think he will be there. I don't think he'll be there for the Steelers' second-round pick, and I don't think the Steelers should use it first on him. I think he has a lot of good things to work with, his size and build, but his over-aggressive hits that have led to missed tackles just reminds me of Mike Mitchell. It was hard for me to be my number one when that was in my head, that he was a reminder of Mike Mitchell. So after this was hard, and I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't like either of these 2 remaining safeties, but I give the third spot to Igwebuike. I don't like how he can't really play free safety, but he can play nickel linebacker and should help on special teams right off the bat. He's probably not going until the 4th round, so I see that is better value than Edmonds, and that leaves Edmonds for last. And I don't know, I was left unimpressed by his tape, and then he was projected for the 3rd round, and that's just too much for me. If he fell back into the 4th round, I would like him a lot better, but the Steelers don't even have a 4th round pick, so it's not even like the Steelers could take him there. So I don't even really know. The Steelers would have to trade back or trade up, and too difficult, too much effort. So I'm not a fan of Edmonds. So how do you rank your prospects?
All right, I just wanted to say that I actually liked all 4 safety prospects I looked at a lot. And even though not all of them would fit best with the Steelers, I would love to see any of them in a Pittsburgh uniform just because of I think they're all pretty good players. So starting first, it's actually Jeremy Reeves, the last guy I touched on. He's actually not expected to be drafted or is expected to be taken in the 7th round. So let me clarify. If he's not drafted, I really hope he gets to Pittsburgh. He seems like the perfect project player at strong safety, and if he develops well into a good player, I could see him being a successor to Morgan Burnett or maybe even Sean Davis. I love what he shows, and the fact that he's so willing and good at run support, it gives me hope that he has a chance to make it. But because he's a project player, I wouldn't want the Steelers to draft him any earlier than the 7th round, though. Second is Justin Reed, and he's just like the perfect prototypical safety. He's the perfect package. He's a good run defender. He's good in coverage, and he has flaws, but they can be coached up. Only problem is, again, the Steelers don't have an immediate need at starter right now, so he wouldn't and probably should not be your first choice at the number 28 pick. So he's probably going to be gone before the Steelers make their 2nd pick. Third, I had Jesse Bates, and there are concerns about his frame and durability, but man, he looked really good in coverage, and his ball skills really piqued my interest. I'd love to have a player on the team that can make plays like that, because I can't remember besides Polamalu the last time the Steelers had a really big ball hawking safety, really. Last I had Kaiser White. And look, there are concerns about his athleticism. They're warranted. And I'd like the Steelers to add someone like him normally, but he just reminds me of Morgan Burnett with him just being signed. He's basically, a lot of his plays, he actually lined up at linebacker. So really you'd be drafting a guy that would be a run support and seam defender, which the Steelers don't need this year. If you want to draft Morgan Burnett's replacement, again, I said it earlier, draft him next year. So White would be a nice player to add. I just don't think there would be really much of a point in adding him this year. All right, so that concludes our safeties going into the draft. So let's get to some NFL news. Yesterday, we talked about Richie Incognito. So apparently, here's what's going on. He's not going to retire, and he's asked for his release from the Buffalo Bills. What is going on?
I have no idea. I honestly don't know. He was talking about stress. It didn't seem like a problem with the Buffalo Bills, but I guess it is. I don't really understand. He should have just came out and said, I didn't want to play for the Buffalo Bills. It's too stressful being in their organization. I don't know if you think it's going to be less stressful going to another organization. But I'm not really sure what he's thinking. But, I mean, I think he might still have a chance to make an NFL roster. I mean, I think he's good enough. Seahawks might be the landing spot for him. They need O-line bad. It's been the story of their past 3 years that they've needed O-line. And then also he might fit well with the Broncos, but honestly, for the Broncos, I think it's better for them to even use their their fifth overall pick on Quentin Nelson, because I think he's worth it. So I don't even think landing Incognito would be that good for them. So what do you think of the Incognito situation? Do you think he lands anywhere?
Well, yeah, he probably ends up somewhere, but I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work out because he just seems like a headache. Although that Jonathan Martin situation was a long time ago, I'm kind of not sure who's going to be who's crazier at this point. Now, yes, I'll give the edge to Martin because he threatened his former teammates and tagged his high school in an Instagram story with a gun, so that's not good. But either way, Incognito's an older player with baggage, and I don't know what happened here or why, but he clearly still wants to play. Who it's for is another question. I'm willing to bet the team that signs him is not going to break the bank for an older player that has such a long history of problems, if you will. So it could be the final stop, but I think this is probably his last chance in the NFL. Some more news today. Eagles cornerback Darryl Worley was arrested early Sunday morning after an altercation with the police. A gun was recovered at the scene, and he was reportedly tased there by police. As of 5:40 p.m. this afternoon, the Eagles have released him. Do you have any comments to make here? Because I got nothing.
I guess the Panthers won the Torrey Smith trade with a question mark, but I think the Eagles would have taken a peanut butter sandwich for Torrey Smith, so I don't really think they won all that much, but that's all I have to say.
My friend who's an Eagles fan told me that he was on a rookie contract, so it frees up a little more money, but I was actually talking to him about potentially Dez Bryant going to Philly, but I don't think they're going to have money for him. So watch out for Dez Bryant in Washington, I guess is now what I'd say.
But Washington already came out hours after he got released saying that he is not on their radar at all. It's only really down to the Giants.
He's not going to New York.
East, anyway.
He's not going. I don't know. He's not going to New York. There's no reason for him to go there. I feel like he'd want to go somewhere where he could be the guy, even though he's probably not going to be the guy on many teams.
Go to Aaron Rodgers. They need wide receivers, and you have a great quarterback. If he's really all that good, he could prove it. Even if he's not all that good, he's got a good quarterback to make him look good. So.
Oh God, I don't know. I don't know if that's something they'd look into, but in any case, one more bit of news. I don't know if you saw this, but Rob Gronkowski is reportedly still considering his future with the NFL and the Patriots. He's going to miss the first offseason program of the season. Would that concern you at all? What do you think about that?
I don't know. I still think he's going to play. I think this is just all a ruse. Like when Roethlisberger said he was going to retire last year, or he's thinking about it. It's just I don't really take it seriously because Tom Brady also isn't going to show up tomorrow for the beginning of their off-season training. So I ain't really worried.
Yeah, Brady's currently on a trip to Qatar with his family, so it's not something I would be super worried about. If he is not, back by training camp, then I would be a little worried. But I don't think there's anything to be concerned about at present. So All right, that wraps things up for today, unless if there's anything else you wanted to say, Austin.
Nope, I think we're good.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions about the show, email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check us out on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find that information on our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. Austin, thanks again for joining me tonight, and we got one more of these to get through before we get to our mock draft episode. So getting hot and heavy. Here we go.
Yep, we're almost done. Have a good night, everybody.
Take care, everyone. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't